This is KWPB, Low Power FM, Newport, Oregon, and Yaquina Bay Chapel. It's November 5th, 2023 with Joncas, teacher. Today we're going to be working in Genesis 1, day number 5, and that's verses 20 through 23. But as normal, I have other stuff to say in review, and Janet's back there going, ugh. Remember this statement he made, the stars also? I'm not going to go through those verses right away, but when God said that, the stars also, he said a mouthful. But first of all, I want to show you what most people think today, the secular point of view of how our sun came about. You know, here is a picture of the universe, and number 1 back there is supposed to be about 4.5, 4.6. They keep stretching it older, you know, a billion years ago. And then it goes through 2, 3, 4, 5, and the sun's forming there in 5, and then 6 is what we've got today. And that's our present solar system. This is how they say it had to have happened. Because it certainly couldn't have happened as the Bible explains it. That's just ridiculous, right?
Not any.
No, we who are.
It's ridiculous is what they come up with.
I'm sorry, what?
I said it's nowhere near as ridiculous as what they come up with.
I know. I mean, they every time something comes up where somebody points out, well, that really couldn't have worked. I mean, they just totally ignore it. And there are hundreds of explanations that follow what the Bible say, but they are just totally ignored. We who are young earth creationists believe that God simply created this number 6 in 4 24-hour days. It was miraculous. I mean, God is a miraculous person, so to speak. I mean, before we even came into existence, before any of this that we can see even came into existence, he existed. Totally separate from everything. And then he created everything. If you remember in my slides, I showed this. This is the end of, well, it started on day 2, and it ended on day 4 looking like this. He stretched out. Now this is what we believe is true. There could be other things. This is science I'm talking now. These are theories. This is not precisely what the Bible says. The Bible, of course, is not a science book. It tells us what we need to go, and God leaves it up to us to figure it out. But this makes a lot of sense. In that 2 or 3 days, to the end of day 4, when he lit everything up and it became visible on Earth, it was 30 billion light years across. Now, we have a telescope that's out in space. It's called the Hubble telescope. And it is now showing us galaxies that are 13.5 billion light years away. Now, think about that. It's seeing stuff that's 13.5 billion light years away, but how can we see them if the Earth is only 6,000 years old? That's called the light time problem. And many people have used that as an excuse to say the Bible can't be right. And that's a tough problem. But I'm going to explain it to you, and there are actually many good answers. First of all, God created science. We did not create science, God created science. And we use it to discover what He did. He created all the science laws. He did that, not us. We discovered them. So, what is it? What is the light travel time problem? As I said, Hubble sees 13.5 billion light years out there, and boy, I tell you, I won't argue with that because I believe it. I mean, the science is correct. It is that far away. But as I said earlier, we're only 6,000 years old. Huh? Is anybody with me so far? I mean, right now, at this point, this doesn't make any sense, correct?
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
We're not.
So, what do you mean, It doesn't make any sense?
It makes sense in one respect and another no. Because he went and pitched everything out there, stars, planets, etc. And he probably put them that far away from us.
That is exactly what happened. Absolutely. But we're going to get into this, but unfortunately, I've got to give you a science lesson first. Sorry, guys. All right, how many of you know Albert Einstein? Know of him?
Know of him.
We recognize that formula, E equals mc squared. Most of us
Right.
do. You know, that's energy is equal to m, which is mass times the speed of light in space, squared. And that's how we ended up with atomic energy, atom bombs, and all kinds of things that Albert Einstein came to regret. But he gave us his theory of special relativity. And he did that in 1905. Basically, time dilation, and this is something I'm going to explain to you more here shortly, is through what they call relativistic speed. In other words, if you got in a spaceship and took off from the Earth and started accelerating at 1 g force, that's one gravitational, the Earth pulling on us now is called 1 g. If you could produce enough power to keep accelerating at 1 g, you could eventually approach the speed of light. Problem is by his theory, as you approach the speed of light, the mass becomes infinite, and it becomes extremely hard to accelerate. But when it comes to God, that's not a problem. I mean, I've shown you in the past how He created the entire universe in 2 or 3 days. He created one whole light year at least diameter ball of water, and then He expanded it, and then He stretched it out, as Dave said earlier. And He stretched it out from what we are about right now to 15 billion light years away to the outer edge of the universe, at least. He did that. So, as you approach the speed of light, it takes, quote, infinite power, but God is way beyond that. And he literally, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I better stop. There's something really interesting. If we could keep accelerating at 1 g, we could fly across the entire universe in one human lifetime. by the lifetime of the guy that's in the spacecraft, not by Earth standards. Because by Earth standards, it would take much longer. Well, I'm going to explain that. Then he created the theory of general relativity. Now, that's odd because he had special relativity, which was first. In fact, it took me a while to figure this out. In 1905. General relativity he figured out in 1915, and that is time dilation through gravity. Now, how many of us know about GPSs? Well, what happens with those is that because they're up in space flying around, there's two things. They're higher in space and they're moving fast in speed. Both of those things create a time dilation, and they literally have to adjust that so that it'll give you an accurate location of where you are on the Earth. If you took a clock and you had it here at sea level, which we're at sea level, and then went up in Colorado, up at the top of their mountains up there, and those two clocks were identically the same, the one up higher, I better make sure I get this right, will run faster than the one that's down below. And they've actually tested that. So if you're close to gravity, if you're in a, quote, gravity well, time will run slower when you're in that well. When you get out of that well, time goes faster. And these things have been proven over and over and over again. The evidence for these things that Albert Einstein figured out are overwhelming. So have we got that?
Yep.
Some of you, most of you, hopefully. I know this is, but it's really important that we understand this, because if nothing else, if you're ever trying to talk to somebody and they say, oh no, the Bible can't be true because, you can say, I know better, or I know someone who can tell you, and I got a whole bunch of books and stuff here that you can send them to so they can learn this. Now, here are a list of things that have been theories given by creationist Christians, a young Earth scientist. And the first one, and I also, now believe me, I've believed all of these at one time or another. God created light in transit. So that when he created everything, boom, he made it, and there it was in space. And he created the light that came from 3.5 billion light years away to Earth, and he just created it, and there it is. So that's one way that people have approached this problem. However, some scientists have gone and said, well, that shows a lot of stuff that's going on out in space. And why would God just create it at that point and send the light to us? So it appears that all these billions of years have transpired in space, and then all of a sudden it's here when actually nothing happened in the past. So I think they've got a legitimate reason for not accepting that, but it's reasonable. I already talked to you about a gravitational well. Remember, if you're in a strong gravity field, it slows time down. Well, we believe that and it has been shown by Hubble, who tried to deny it, but the astronomer whose name is Hubble saw that we are in the center of the universe. Now imagine being in the center of that huge gravity well. So the clocks that are on Earth are running slow, and the clocks that are far out in space are running fast. So that's how they can be billions of years old, and we're only seeing 6,000 years here on Earth. Now, there are people with doctorate degrees, physicists, who have looked at these problems, and they say that the gravitational well that we live in, which even though it is very, very deep, is not deep enough to account for that amount of time. So, now I'm only giving you a handful of possibilities here. There are many people out there with different theories. I've even got some of my own, what they're worth. Not much, but anyway, one of them is that God accelerated the expansion of the universe, creating a fifth dimension, and that was Dr. John Hartnett. And I have here two of his videos. One of them is, this is Dr. Hartnett's Starlight Time and the New Physics. He has suggested, and this is because of the work of a secular scientist, that as the universe expanded, the expansion was accelerated. And Dr. Hartnett has called that a fifth dimension. And through the mathematics, it works out quite well, and it is a very reasonable explanation of how the starlight got here in a very short period of time. Honestly, I could not explain it to you. He has to do it. I'm not that smart, but it makes sense. I listened to it. I've listened to it many times, and it makes sense. But this one, Distant Starlight, a forum, is him and Dr. Humphreys. And Dr. Humphreys I really like. But in this one, his idea about the cosmos, honestly, it made the least sense to me. And the reason that it did, and by the way, this is Distant Starlight, a forum, which is available for $2. I will put links where you can purchase each one of these when I do the video. He proposed something that I barely was able to make sense out of. And he later, Dr. Humphreys, wrote this paper, which is quite new. He wrote it in December of 2022. And I wrote him a letter asking him about some things, and he told me about this, and I got it. And this is his newest idea. It's called a more biblical cosmology. And I tell you, to study this, to me, because I'm of course interested in these kind of things, this really explains how God did it. And it's a wonderful paper. By the way, it's available at Journal of Creation. If you subscribe to that, you can get it. If you want to wait until December, it'll become available for free. Anyway, let me explain to you this paper as best I can in short order. A more biblical cosmology. This is from the first 4 days of creation. Now, if you remember from my earlier ones, we talked about God creating ball of water that is 1 light year in diameter, which is huge. That is really the deep. But he rotated that in 1 day. Now imagine having a ball on a string and going like this, and it going around 1 day. It's being held in place, which for God, that's nothing. I mean, he is so great. And by the time I'm done here, I hope you get an idea of how fantastically great God is. In 1 day, he spun that entire ball in 24 hours, like on a string, and he held it all together. But the thing is that all the water that was on the outside of that ball was going at 2,400 times, this is in this paper, the speed of light. Imagine the power that it took to do that. And then he stretched it out. And when he stretched it out, it literally went millions of times faster than the speed of light. Because to get from 1 light year to from 1 light year, which had been a half a light year in diameter, to the full outstretched length of the entire universe, that's 15 billion light years. In just over 2 days. He could have done it in 1 day. He could have done it, stretched it out over those days. We don't know. But at that, it was millions of times faster than the speed of light. Now, I'm just realizing I might not have told you, the rates of physical processes depend on the speed of light. And this has been shown by scientists over and over, and this has been confirmed. So as you approach the speed of light or go faster than the speed of light, everything that goes on happens faster. So if you're here on Earth and somebody takes off and you got a really powerful telescope that works instantly, you here on Earth will see a day go by. But out there, many, many months will go by. And if you keep pulling that out and stretching it out, it's easy to get to billions of years, when only 6,000 years happen here on Earth. These are not things that normally come to my mind as being something that makes sense. But scientists have shown it over and over and over again through what we call real science. Not this where they're guessing at stuff.
Well, and God even says a day's like 1,000 years to him.
Yeah, I would not go with that. Because that was referring to a situation,
Right.
that was a very specific situation. And that I would go with God. To God, a day is like a billion years. I mean, to me, that would make much closer sense to what in reality occurred. So, good idea, though. Now, here, I've got a quote here. So, since the speed of light controls the speed of time, billions of years worth of events would take place in the heavens within 4 ordinary length days on Earth. Unquote. And I'm sorry, but I did not write that down. Now, does any of that make any sense to you guys? I know it's difficult.
Dr. Humphreys?
Pardon?
Was that from Dr. Humphreys?
That quote was not from Dr. Humphreys. Actually, I think I got that quote out of Wiki. What is that?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. I think that's where I got that quote.
I didn't think that was very accurate, always.
There are things in that are not accurate, and they're challenged. But generally speaking, most of the stuff that's in there is accurate. Yes, Dave?
I thought the closer you got to the speed of light, everything slowed down
If
Rather
you
than-
are
rather than speeding up.
if you're on the earth and you got that telescope looking, that magic
Right.
telescope, it would look like everything was going extremely fast in the spaceship. If you've got a telescope in the spaceship looking back at Earth, the Earth would look like it's going very slow. In fact, when you reach the speed of light, they say it looks like the Earth actually would stop.
Okay, so yeah, in that case, yes.
Got it?
Got it.
Well, this is a very special thing, but we need to understand, the secular people, try to say, well, the Bible is what it says in Genesis chapter 1 can't be true because, look, here's what's going on. But they refuse to look at any other possibilities. I mean, it's not a pleasant thing. Now, Genesis 1:1 through 1:19. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed and morning came, making the first day. Verse 6. Then God said, "Let there be a space between the waters to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made the space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heavens. God called the space sky. And evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. Verse 9. Then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground may appear." And that is what happened. God called the dry ground land and the water seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant, and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came." And that is what happened. Verse 12. Then God produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants and trees with seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produced plants and trees of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the third day. And at the end of the third day, this is what we have. It's been named Pangea, but this is how they believe the continents were before the flood. Everything all tied together. So, day 4, verse 14. Then God said, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth." And that is what happened. God made two great lights, the larger one to govern the day and the smaller one to govern the night. He made the stars. God set the lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the fourth day. So as I talked about earlier, we had an entire universe that was visible at the end of the fourth day. But so this is what we got at the end of the fourth day. Here's the earth with the sun and moon and the entire universe that before midnight we ended up with this. There's the whole universe with the many billions of galaxies all lit up and visible on that day. Now, this is one thing. Now, this is one of my theories. I don't know how good Adam's eyesight was, but if it was, and I know that it was at least as good as mine, and I can see Andromeda Galaxy, which is our neighboring galaxy to ours, the Milky Way, and then he was not able to actually see any farther than that. So the stars, the planets appeared to be stars to him. It could be that everything that had formed only needed to be able to be seen from that far out. Because anything else out there cannot be seen with the naked eye. Although his was probably significantly better than mine. But that's just an idea of mine that I've thought about. But if that were true, that would make the formulas that our friends, our doctorate friends here, would become very difficult. Anyway, okay, day 5. Now this is verses 20 through 23, and this is today's lesson. And believe me, it's going to be shorter than expected. Now I have given you both the New Living Translation and the New American Standard Bible. In verse 20, then God said, "Let the water swarm with fish and other life. Let the skies be filled with birds of every kind." Then God said, now this is the New American Standard Bible, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens." Verse 20. New Living Translation 21. And I want you to hear the similarities of these two translations and take note of the differences, so that you understand that whatever translation you have, and most of them are pretty decent. There's a handful out there that were deliberately modified to fit some really bad beliefs, but most of them are really good. So 21. So God created great sea creatures every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. And the New American Standard, God created the sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind, and God saw that it was good. 22, in New Living Translation. Then God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And NASB is almost identical. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And then finishing, and evening passed and morning came, marking the first day.
Fifth.
Pardon?
Fifth day.
Not first, fifth.
Ouch. Thank you. Marking the fifth day. That is where we are, right?
Right.
There was evening and there was morning, a fifth day, the New American Standard Bible. Now, I'm going to show you what this was like. Here's an overview. First of all, there were way more creatures on the earth at that time than there are now. There were literally hundreds or thousands more different kinds of creatures they found them in the fossil records. When God created, He made this absolutely wonderful creation that was so diverse. But many of those that they find in the fossil record are still here today. We're going to look at fish and sea life. Then we're going to look at sharks and shark fossils. And then we're going to look at birds and bird fossils. This following slide comes from a group called adefenseofthebible.com. So here are a number of, this is just 6 different things that they thought were extinct and now are. Horseshoe crabs they thought were extinct, but not so. And every one of these, I have examples of these. Now, remember, I'm not a scientist, and I didn't have the time to research and find an exact duplication of each one of these as they existed then in the fossil and the picture that I show of a modern one. For instance, here's a squid fossil, and here is a squid of today. Now, any of you out there that are scientifically oriented, if you see my small mistakes, please don't write me. I'm telling you up front. I've just got examples here. The exact duplicates, that's a good word, are out there and they're available. Fish. Now, we've all seen fish, so I'm not going to show you. But, I mean, look at that. I mean, it's obviously a fish, and it looks like something that Dave and I caught here recently. This is a horseshoe crab. What's really interesting, now that's supposed to be many millions of years old, hundreds of millions of years old, right? Well, there's the modern one. And what's even better yet, we get a load of this.
Oh, Lola.
Wow.
I mean, that little kid is standing around those horseshoe crabs.
Oh, those are big.
They're big.
That's a big horse.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, and there's this. This is a trilobite. There is, for a long time, there's been a debate about whether trilobites are here today. But remember our chart? They showed a picture of one of these and its modern equivalent. Anybody got any questions what that is?
Starfish.
Yeah, or this. Here's Here's another. I mean,
Killer whale.
these animals were created, and they're still here. Some of them have modified over the years to fit the environment, but there they are. And jellyfish. I mean, there are many jellyfish in the fossil record. And this, does anybody know what that is?
Turtle.
Sea turtle. How about this? They talk about the monsters in the Bible, about the monsters of the deep.
Crocodile? Alligator?
No, that's whale.
No, that is not a whale.
No, it's not.
Yeah, here,
Not a
let
crocagator.
me show you what they think it looked like.
That a crocagator or an alligator.
Well, if you look at the picture, that thing's
Loch
50
Ness.
feet long.
Right.
So, and this is an artist's presentation of what it looked like. But I don't think we have that one extant today, or still in existence today. That's
Maybe that's what Nessie looks like.
Yeah, the Loch Ness.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, actually, this is closer to what
Oh.
Nessie looks
Oh.
like.
Yeah.
And I believe that animal, Nessie, did exist, and has probably died by now. But anyway, and here's another one. This they see these from their fossilization, and these big ones are no longer available because they've died out.
Right.
But many of them were still around even after the flood. But there's much research that goes into that. Here's
That's one of the things that surprised me when I visited the Noah's Ark was the animals that were still alive after the flood on the with the ark. A lot of the dinosaurs and stuff, not the big huge ones, but other ones.
we will get into that in detail like this when I get around to the flood in Genesis. The secular world just wants to do everything they can to deny the flood. Because if the flood is true, then that confirms that what the Bible is telling us is true, that it's actual history. But they do not want to accept that. Because if they accept that, then, maybe we'll have to accept the rest of this too. But they don't want to do that. So they reject it totally. But this is one of my favorite ones. They found the skeletal remains of animals like this with the very, very long necks. And it seems to me they're like 80 or 90 feet long. They're just huge. This is a really interesting one because it came from an animal that looked like this. That's kind of like a squid. They have a special name for it. I've forgotten. I didn't get the name down, so I forgot what it is. But now, have any of you gone to the beach and collected shells? Jan and I did is when we were over in the Marshall Islands, we collected all kinds of shells. But this is what they look like. But those are not shells as we would find them. Those are all fossils.
Yeah.
Every one of these, right, is a fossil. But it looks like the collection you'd take from the beach. But let's take a look at what some of the modern stuff looks like. And I really like this one. I'm afraid that little guy might. I hope that that sea turtle is not hungry. But here's a modern look at all the stuff that is there. And this is a modern photograph. Imagine how much more there was before of different kinds. This one is one of my favorites. That guy's only about that tall, about 4 inches. But when Janet and I were in the Marshall Islands, I dove on a coral reef, and I got to see one of those swimming around. That was, for some reason I thought they would be bigger, and then I saw one in actual life. So anyway, now what is this?
Fish.
What kind of fish?
Fish.
Almost looks like a shark, but I don't know.
A shark is what it is.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Now look at that body. Notice the fins. There's 2 on top, and then there's three on the bottom. But here, look at this guy.
Great white.
Actually, this is a
Black tip.
black tip. That is correct. Yeah.
They haven't changed much.
Okay. No. That's the point. Now the birds. Now here's the fossil of a bird. Notice the feathers.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take another look at it, Janet. If you look at the wings that are on your right hand side, you can see the feathers flowing out from that. And then if you look at the tail, you can see the feathers coming off the tail. Do you see it now? She still doesn't see it. Okay. Well, here, take a
You
look
see
at
the black line?
Yeah.
Okay. You come down basically to our left.
Mm-hmm.
You see the feathers on the edge?
Those are feathers.
Those are feathers.
Oh.
Got it? Good. Okay. Now, look at this guy here. The feathers are a little more obvious here on his tail, at least.
And then on his leg.
Yeah, notice, though, how the neck is bent back.
Yep.
And we go back here to this one. The neck is bent back.
Yep.
This is how animals respond when they're drowning. So when we get to the flood, I will explain how all this happens, but that is just a tremendous indication of how they died. They drowned and then were covered immediately. So those guys probably look something like this, which is, now as I said, this is not a perfect example, but I think it's close enough for illustration. And then there's this guy, which I think looks very much like this. Now this one you do not see today because they think it would probably look something like this.
Pterodactyl.
Yep. Boy, you've got all this stuff down. Thank you, Chuck.
You're welcome.
Now there's this guy. Now this is a taxidermist creation of a modern bird.
Dodo.
They only gave a scientific name for it. So this bird is in the fossil record, and it is extant today. In other words, it still lives today. The thing is the tail of this bird, which if we go back, actually let's go back to here. Notice the tail, there's a bone that goes out there. Okay. Well, if you go to this bird, it does not have a bone out there like that. Let me read this to you. this is what's special about this bird: a fused bony plate at the end of the backbone that supports tail feathers in living birds, instead of a bony tail which is found in many bird fossils. So that's the end of my showing of the old birds and the new ones. But here's a new bird. This guy was in our backyard just 2 or 3 days ago. He was. We had a wonderful time watching him, but it's just absolutely wonderful.
Is he after them rats?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we had a rat in a trap, and it was after that rat. I went out and I shot the rat and put it out on the patio, and his eyes just went boing.
Got big.
Yeah, he was at that time he was up in the tree, and I went in the house and probably less than a minute he had that rat, and he flew off with it. So now this is another science lesson. I want to go through this real quick. We have studied the complex in what's called the macro. In other words, the whole universe, the stars, the planets, all of that. Okay? Now we're going to be talking about the complex in the micro, the stuff that we can't see without scanning microscopes and all that kind of stuff. So there's the normal, which we see right here around us, that's in between. But you need to understand what's happening in the genetics. And I'm telling you this now because the next time I talk, it's going to be the day that God created man. And that's going to take a considerable period of time. But in genetics, there's DNA. And how many people know about DNA? Okay, everybody's heard about it. There's RNA, there's proteins, and all that sort of stuff. Each DNA is 6 feet long. So in every single cell in your body is a coil of DNA, and it's 6 feet long. If you took all the DNA in every cell in your body and hooked it end to end, it would go from here to the sun, back and forth, many times. So it's amazing. The information that is held in one strand of DNA in our human body would take 850 Bibles to fill up. I mean, that is a huge amount of information. Each cell in your body is way more complicated than a large city. When Darwin was around, they thought that the inside of each cell was just essentially a blob with a nucleus, and that would separate and change. And that just simply is not so. The more that they get into the cell, the more they find out how complex it is. There are machines inside of a cell that strip a DNA and turn it into RNA, which then in turn will create the various kinds of things needed, including and especially proteins that make our body work. There are literally tens of thousands of different kinds of proteins in each one of our bodies. And all of that is programmed into one 6 foot long piece of DNA. Now imagine creating a computer program that would be capable of doing that. Here, for instance, is this is just the tip of the iceberg. Here on on the left side is a DNA strand. In two, the DNA strand is being split apart. As I said, there's a machine that does that. And then it becomes RNA, and then it goes into the right side, and it has all these things happen to it. And there are literally thousands of little machines inside of every single cell that do all these things. And that you see that tail going off on the right hand side, that what will turn into a protein. It'll turn into a protein. I'm just showing you this. You don't need to learn this, but this is just, as I said, the tip of the iceberg, because these people that study this, you listen to them, and they got a whole encyclopedia of jargon that they would use to describe everything that's going on in this. It is extremely complicated. Is it complicated to you? Boy, it is to me. I would like to be able to tell you in detail. I am going to put links to different references online where you can go if you want to study this and learn. One of the things about DNA, excuse me, is that within the cell it can be repaired. So if a strand of DNA is damaged, as it goes through the cell, it will get repaired, which is just amazing. Can you imagine a computer program that if something goes wrong with its main program, it would just fix itself? That's what it does. Somebody tried to take the DNA of a simple cell and compare it to a computer program. And that DNA was on the order of magnitudes of thousands of times more complex than our computer programs. DNA works in 4 different dimensions. Now I have to describe the DNA for you, and I've said it's 6 feet long. My arms aren't quite that long when it gets stretched out. And when they first found out about it, they thought that everything was in that and worked just in a straight line. But then they discovered that a DNA strand will produce a protein, which will then go over to another DNA strand and turn a gene on or off, or do all kinds of changes. So that's the second dimension. Parts of it will leave and go to another DNA and make a change. But that's not all. It has 3 dimensions. And actually it forms a ball, and in the center of it, it has programs that are not used. All the stuff that's being used is on the outside. But when it runs into a situation where it needs something on the inside, it will open up, reform, put the stuff that's on the inside on the outside, then do its business, create the proteins or whatever needs to be done. And then when whatever brought that on, now this is the DNA figuring out what needs to be done. I mean, think about it. It figures out what needs to be done, it does it. The 4th dimension is time. When you are first conceived, certain kinds of DNA gets set up and it helps you to grow and turn into what we are. But after birth, that DNA changes and does something else. So God did this. Every single cell has this. I mean, think about this happening in some mud puddle and lightning striking it and all of a sudden creating everything that DNA does. It's just, it's an impossibility. And again, I ask you, that what will you believe? Man in his wisdom or God in his word? Amen.
Amen.
This is KWPB, Low Power FM, Newport, Oregon, and Yaquina Bay Chapel, November 5th, 2023, with Joe Joncas, teacher.